Okay, calm down.
But I really do think that it would be an interesting exercise to revisit one of his past State of the Union addresses when the Democrats had the ability to actually do some of these things and compare his rhetoric then with his rhetoric now when none of this is going to get done because it's not going to pass the Senate. And yeah, I would just strongly suspect that back when it could have been done, he probably wouldn't be reading a speech that literally sounds like the Cliff's Notes from one of Bernie's speeches to a large degree. I would guess that you're all probably fairly familiar with the recent bill in Congress that was all about condemning the horrors of socialism, which passed with the help of something like over 100 Democrats voted in favor of it, including people like Ro Khanna. And despite him also endorsing like DSA candidates and things like that. But I noticed that Joe Biden seems to go out of his way to remind us of how big of a capitalist that he is. And yet at the same time, to me at least, the most flowery of his rhetoric seemed to run counter to capitalism. Just as an example, it would be statements like everyone deserves clean water in their homes, point blank, or, doing away with homelessness and things like that. Like under a capitalist system, that's not how that would work. So granted, I know that it's all, rhetoric, and now since none of it's going to happen, he's free to speak as progressively as he would like. But I was just wondering if anybody had any thoughts either on that particular vote and the people that voted in favor of it, and also the contradiction in rhetoric between being a staunch capitalist, but then also fighting for, Social Security and Medicare and clean water and these sorts of things.
Well, I mean, there are people who would argue, and then I'll pass it to you guys, but there are people who would argue that these things are not incompatible with capitalism, and that in order to have capitalism, you have to have these stopgap measures. That's why, like Dan, you know this more than I do, but Otto von Bismarck, right, was the father of Social Security. And he was and
he made the Socialist Party illegal. He passed anti-socialist laws, right? That people were really upset about at the time because it was like one of the largest parties in Germany. I think the socialism thing just indicates that, again, liberalism hasn't found a good enemy. I wish there was a real enemy they could face. It's just at least during this Cold War there was a communist state. Now the best they can do is North Korea and Venezuela. It's sad for anti-liberals that we haven't come up with a better resistance, that they still have to draw to that old enemy. It's kind of a grim thing.
Do you think that they've thought about how, at least what my understanding is that the majority of people under a certain age, whether it's 40 or 50 or what have you, now tend to have a more favorable opinion of alternatives to capitalism, how at least electorally them making this a huge thing, do you think that they've calculated that that's not a concern?
I think they think it's a way to score easy points in the bullshit culture war and don't think it'll really affect elections. It provides some sort of media stuff for a couple of weeks, and maybe it riles up some rich people who are all worried about quiet quitting. Can't shut up about fucking quiet quitting at Davos to score up some bucks. And they're right. It's not going to affect the elections. There's no real choice. Either the young people are not going to vote or they're going to be tricked into voting again. No, what I think they'll keep on extending the student debt non-repayment. That'll just be like a permanent feature of politics, and that'll basically ensure that younger people vote Democrat. For fear that they're going to start, putting back their repayment plans and whatnot. So I think that think the Democrats
buy votes when you can get votes as a service. Honestly,
yeah, they don't even have to buy them. At least in patronage countries, you get the $50 Amazon card. Here you just don't have to pay the your student loan debt that was like stolen from you and stole your youth.
Yeah. Well,
I can't believe they actually passed this resolution. There's a piece at MSNBC. The GOP horrors of socialism resolution was bait. Dems took it. The GOP's bad faith attempt to divide Dems and stigmatize the left succeeded. And this measure that they introduced, so 109 Democrats joined every Republican in the House to vote in favor of the non-binding resolution. And I'm just reading for part of it. The resolution says, socialist ideology necessitates a concentration of power that has time and time again collapsed into communist regimes, totalitarian rule, and brutal dictatorships.
How they could have gotten some Republican votes to move the other way is they just insert the word national before socialism. But that's
right.
Another story.
Yeah.
I think that the resolution that Congress passed, and for that matter, Biden saying he's a capitalist, it's a form of, or perceived by the inflictors of it, as inoculation, to whether extent it actually works or not. They're going to call us, every Democratic presidential candidate has been for decades been called a socialist by some Republican spear carrier. So, hey, we're going to inoculate ourselves. But, getting to the point of, I think, about the contradiction, I think we could describe this speech tonight as a modern liberal speech. It's a modern liberal / neoliberal speech. And the reality is that kind of a speech and that kind of an ideology has always tried to square a circle that can never be squared. So they want to pretend that you could have this capitalism and you could regulate it, but still allow the capitalism to basically run roughshod over the society. And everybody could be taken care of. So it's a tooth fairy sort of a story.
Right. Well, I think that one of the I could be mistaken, but one of the comments Biden said during his speech tonight was something to the effect of capitalism with exploitation isn't capitalism or something like that. And I was like, that's literally by definition capitalism.
Buddy.
Right.
Yeah.